The rules for naming covalent compounds are slightly more involved, and that's why we do them last. Remember, we're talking now about two nonmetals or two or more nonmetals bonded together, and we're really going to look at only two kinds of covalent compounds, binary and ternary. If we break those terms up, we see the prefix bi means two, ter, like tertiary, means three. So we're going to focus on covalent compounds that have two elements bonded together, like CO2, or three elements bonded together, like glucose or sugar. It's not to say that those are the only two types of compounds, covalent compounds on the planet, but those are the only two we're going to worry about. The reason it becomes more involved when we're naming covalent compounds is because we're going to use prefixes to tell how many atoms of each element are present within the compound. The good news is these prefixes should look really familiar. You use them all throughout geometry. Hopefully you used them in middle school and elementary school. So this part shouldn't throw you for too much of a loop. There are a couple exceptions I want to get out of the way from the start. One is that we drop the mono prefix when there's only one of the first element in the compound. We have to say mono any other time, and if there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the first element, we need those prefixes. But when there's one of the first element, I'll give you a really common example, CO2, we don't put mono in front of the carbon. We call this carbon dioxide, not monocarbon dioxide. Okay? Now, the second exception is when the first letter of an element begins with a vowel, like oxygen. When we have something like mono, we're going to drop, usually. The convention is to drop the last O in mono like this, instead of calling it carbon monoxide, which looks goofy and sounds goofy, we just squeeze these two O's together to make it carbon monoxide. That one you would not be penalized for. If you referred to something and wrote it out as carbon monoxide, you'd get full credit. You just have to understand that you're not going to see it written like that. You're going to see it written carbon monoxide. The rules for writing the chemical formulas. This is consistent with ionic rules, which is good. The least electronegative element comes first, which is good because the least electronegative element is going to be the most positive, just like we did with ionic substances where the metals were named first. The most electronegative element is written last, also consistent with ionic, because the most electronegative element is going to be the most negative. Remember, we're sharing now, so it's not as if there's a transfer and something becomes totally positive and something becomes totally negative. These are going to be partial positives and partial negatives because of electronegativity differences. And it's the subscripts that tell you the prefix. Right? The example below, the 2 that comes after the oxygen, that's what tells you it's dioxide.